Hello and welcome to the Etoft21sports show for August 30th. How is everyone doing? My name is Erik. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. We have a phenomenal show lined up for you today. My boy Sterling from Silver Star Sports, him and I are going to be breaking down the AFC North. I am going to be telling you who you should be targeting in your fantasy football drafts, and Gino is going to be telling you what bet to lock in tomorrow at Saratoga. Let's see what Gino's got a cooking.
Always happy to be back here talking sports with Erik. Got a best bet for you this week over at Saratoga on Wednesday. Make sure to check out all of Erik's content. I've been so lucky to talk sports with him over the last couple years. He helps me out on all of my shows. Whatever he's talking about, it's always very well researched. He puts a lot of time into it. And I always appreciate talking sports with Erik. Let's see if we can get you a winner at Saratoga. We're going to go to race number 4 on Wednesday. We're looking at the number 6 in here, Secret Time. Was just going a little too short last time out. This is a 5-year-old mare who's better going just a little bit longer. And this distance, it's much better than the 5.5 furlongs where she just got outrun. Now, if you'll notice, a lot of her recent races have been followed by layoffs. She'll have a race and then a couple months off, and then another race and a couple months off. I love the fact that she's finally going to be able to put a couple races together here. This barn can really fire with horses at a price in this field. I think she could offer you some nice value. She's anything over 9-2. That's the number 6, Secret Time. She's 6-1 on the morning line. That's race number 4 at Saratoga on Wednesday, August the 31st. Good luck in all of your plays, and we'll be back here with another one for you next week.
Guys and girls, make sure you give Gino a follow at It's Me, Gino B, on Twitter and Instagram. Great dude. I'm going to be on his podcast this Friday telling you fantasy football. We're going to be going position by position in fantasy football, telling you who we like and who we don't like. Now, let's shift the attention of this show to the fantasy football spotlight. The player that's in the fantasy football spotlight this week is David Montgomery. The reason that David Montgomery is in the fantasy football spotlight this week is simple. He has an ADP of 35.7, is the 17th running back being drafted. If he's on the board and I am drafting, I am definitely locking him in. The reason why is this. He's one of 5 running backs to play over 70% of the snaps last season, playing 75%. Over the last 3 seasons, he's logged the 5th most touches, the 9th most total yards, 11th most fantasy points amongst running backs. Montgomery finished as the 15th highest scoring running back in fantasy points per game last season. With Damian Williams departing, Tariq Cohen being out of the season with an injury, Montgomery will play a bigger role in the passing game as well. Plus, the Bears are switching to a zone running scheme this year. Montgomery thrives on zone runs where he averaged 4.2 yards per carry compared to only 3.4 yards per carry on power runs. With the consistency that Montgomery has shown over the last 3 years, him having a bigger role in the passing game this season, and the Bears switching to a zone running scheme, plus the Bears using more RPOs to freeze the linebackers, this is going to open up more stuff for David Montgomery. Hence why I love David Montgomery, and I am targeting him in my fantasy football drafts this year. Now, without further ado, I would like to welcome to the show one of the OGs. He was on one of my first ever podcasts. He was on the first ever Etoft21sports show, Sterling from Silver Star Sports. Sterling, how you doing today, my man?
I'm doing awesome, man. Thanks for having me. Always a joy.
Dude, I love having you on. I was so excited. I messed up and put NFC North instead of AFC North on the banner. I was so excited to see that beautiful mug of yours, man. I totally messed up, so my apologies to everybody. So you were on, this is obviously geared toward the NFL. You were on for our first show where we talked about the NBA, and Bobby is chiming in. Sterling, thoughts on KD?
Ultimately, I thought this was going to happen. I didn't think KD had a whole lot of leverage with so many years left on his contract. I didn't think he was going to get moved anywhere. But it's going to be super interesting to see how the Nets rebound from this. They've had such a tumultuous offseason with so much drama, so much controversy. But if you look at their roster, they still have a good team, lots of weapons. Joe Harris, Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons, Seth Curry. it's a good roster. They might be able to make a deep run if they can regroup, get the culture back together, get KD, Steve Nash, everyone on the same page. But yeah, I'm ultimately not surprised he didn't go anywhere though.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I thought it was Celtics or nothing. He didn't go anywhere. Totally agree with what you're saying. I think they're going to be deadly too. I think they legitimately have a shot to like make it out. And for Katie's legacy, that's what he needs to do. But we are not here to talk NBA, even though you and I could probably talk 4 hours nonstop on the NBA. We're here to talk a little NFL, namely the AFC. We're going to start with the Cleveland Browns. The Browns 8-9 last season. Pythagorean win total was 8.94. Over under 8.5. To win the North, they are plus 450. To win the AFC, they're plus 2,100. To win the Super Bowl, they are plus 3,000, so 30-1. What are your thoughts on the Cleveland Browns?
So I'm actually pretty low on the Browns. First, I'll just start off with their strengths and weaknesses. Their strengths, they have a great run game, great offensive line. Defense has playmakers around the field from Myles Garrett, JLK, Denzel Ward. As far as their weaknesses, I think it's very likely we see a broken locker room. I also just think they have some bad karma coming their way from the Deshaun Watson situation. And their receivers outside of Amari Cooper are very lackluster. So the reason I'm ultimately low on the Browns is if you look at their quarterback play, Deshaun Watson's obviously out for 11 games. Jacoby Brissett is at best the 30th best quarterback in the league. So that dramatically lowers their floor and their ceiling.
You're being generous saying 30th, dude. Like,
yeah, that's generous. At the absolute best. So,
so Brandon's got a question here. How bad did the Browns get beat week 1 versus Carolina, aka Baker?
I don't know how bad, but I'm smashing that Panthers money line for sure.
I've already locked it in, my friend. And if you haven't locked it in already, I suggest you locked it in. I got it in a pick. It's already juiced up to Panthers -2. So I would definitely lock that in as soon as I can. Congratulations, Grandma Elena. She is still up. She didn't pass out. So congratulations to her. My thought on the Browns are this. They released J.C. Treader, one of the best pass blocking centers. He's going to be replaced by Nick Harris. Harris only played 68 snaps last season, but in those 68, he allowed 0 sacks. No, it's a small sample size, but that is pretty good. My big issue with the offensive line is, can Conklin and Willis, are they going to be able to stay healthy? If those guys are able to stay healthy, that offensive line is one of the better ones in the league. When Watson does come back, what do you expect? I mean, he hasn't played a game since the 3rd of January in 2021. What do you expect from him? You have to expect rust, no?
Yeah, that's also one of the major points I had and why I'm lower on this team. He's going to be sitting for 11 games. He already hasn't played in about 2 years. So there's definitely going to be some rust. You can't just slot him in as a top 10 quarterback immediately, especially when all these teams and all these defenses are going to be getting up to speed midway through the season. Overall, I'm just lower on this team. You also know Kevin Stefanski. He loves to run the ball, but when the going gets tough, he shies away from it. So yeah, I'm just lower on this Browns team right now.
What do you feel about Stefanski as a coach?
I feel like he's good, but then, like I said, he just shies away from the run game when the going gets tough. Like, he was over-reliant on Baker the past few years. If he does that with Jacoby Brissett, they're not going to have success. So he's shown his good moments, but then it's just too inconsistent for me.
Now, here's my thing. My question to you is, why is Nick Chubb's ADP so flippin' low? Just listen to these numbers. You're going to be blown away. You're going to be blown away. He has gained 1,200 plus total yards, scored 8 plus TDs, averaged over 5.1 yards per carry in each of his first 4 seasons. Last season, Chubb rushed for the 2nd most yards, 3rd most breakaway runs, the 2nd highest breakaway run rate, forced the 5th most missed tackles, gained the 2nd most rushing yards after contact, had the most rushing yards after contact per attempt, was 3rd in the NFL in evaded tackles, was 2nd in evaded tackles per game, and 3rd in broken tackles per carry. How are you not running this guy 25 times a game.
Yeah, I did a draft literally yesterday, and his ADP, or he was the 33rd ranked player. I mean, that was interesting.
So we have an interesting fantasy question. If you had to choose between Harris, Chubb, or Mixon, who would you draft?
You see, I would take Joe Mixon personally because if you look at Najee Harris, we'll get into the Steelers later on in this episode, but they don't have the greatest offensive line. Also, they have a rookie quarterback or Mitchell Trubisky, who's kind of a journeyman. So it's not a guarantee that their offense is going to be good. With Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, we don't know if the Browns' offense is going to be good. But with the Bengals, even though there's a lot of mouths to feed, you know they're going to be a good offense. Also, they're looking to play much more up-tempo this year. Last year, they were bottom 3 in pace. They're looking to up that this year, so I think Joe Mixon's going to have a good year. Also, they upgraded their offensive line in the offseason, so Joe Mixon's my pick.
Do you think Watson is washed?
He very well could be. There's been a lot of training camp interceptions, and I know you can't always pay attention to training camp, but he's going to be rusty for sure.
Yeah, he hasn't played for a year, and we saw what happened with Le'Veon Bell, and I understand that's two different positions. You know what I mean? When you're gone, it does you kind of lose the timing and everything. And people are talking about Kareem Hunt. Like, first of all, I found this stat staggering. He has had six leg injuries to his right leg since entering the league. 6.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like, it just shows you, like, once you get these soft tissue injuries, it's going to linger. Do you think he gets traded?
I was surprised to see him in trade rumors, but he clearly wants out. So I wouldn't be surprised if they traded him. Also, I know Dearness Johnson, he stepped up last year, so I think the Browns are prepared to move on from Kareem Hunt. So,
and then what's going to happen with the passing game? No Jarvis Landry, no OBJ. They obviously added Amari Cooper. I think Cooper's going to run the deeper routes, keep the safeties honest. Rookie David Bell, I think, is be very underrated in fantasy. He's going to be working underneath. With how good the Browns running game was, they only ranked 21st in play action passing. I really feel that with Watson, who, like, when he was playing, PFF had him the 3rd highest graded passer in play action passing. I think we're going to see that incorporated more. And overall, I think that's going to help them.
What are your overall thoughts on the Browns, like how they do this year?
I'm not a Baker Mayfield guy. I think they'd be in a better position if they still had Baker. It kind of blows my mind with everything going on with Deshaun Watson. You would trade for Deshaun Watson. You know what I mean? Like, you're in a win now moment with what you have on the defensive side. You have great players in the secondary, good linebacking core. You have Clowney. You have Myles Garrett on the defensive line. This team is built to win now, and I think you're blowing it. I think you kind of blew it, and their window, I think, is probably going to be closed after this year.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, with trading for Deshaun Watson, they put an unnecessary target on their back. I think it pissed all of the NFL off, Deshaun Watson, the whole situation. And so I think people are going to be playing with a personal vendetta against the Browns.
Now, here's this. So before we move on, I'm just going to say this. And 25, 26 women, 26 masseuse. Okay. Friend played in the NBA. He had a masseuse. He paid this person to travel with him all over during the NBA season. Everything. Hotel, plane, food, everything, and a salary. That's how much these players care about their bodies. You know what I mean? So that's all I'm going to say, and we're going to move on to the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens, 8-9 last year, Pythagorean win total 8.94, over under 9.5 to win the North. They're plus 140 to win the AFC. They're plus 950 to win the Super Bowl. They are 20-1. What are your thoughts about the Ravens?
I love this Ravens team. Actually, I put a personal bet on them. I did $50 to win the Super Bowl. Bring back $1,000 if it hits. Really high on this Ravens team. If you think about last year, what is the number one thing the Ravens want to do on offense? Run the ball.
Yep.
And their 2 top running backs got hurt. So not only were they prepared for J.K. Dobbins to have a breakout season, but then Gus Edwards gets hurt. And so now they're running the ball with the corpse of Le'Veon Bell and Devonta Freeman like it's 2017.
Yeah.
So, and not only that, Lamar Jackson was playing at an MVP level. They were 5-1, tied for top of the AFC. And then he goes down, and then Tyler Huntley starts to play well. And then he gets hit with COVID. So this was just a turmoil of a season. They lost 6 games by less than a score. I think they'll have some positive regression to the mean. And I think this team could be really, really dangerous this year.
I love them. I have the same exact bet as you. I have them 20-1 to win the Super Bowl. Offensive line obviously struggled last year. Ronnie Stagley, who only played 1 game, I really think that was the main reason why. He's back. They drafted, I know you were very high on him when you came on for our draft special, Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa. He's going to be the starting center. They signed Morgan Moses, who graded very high per PFF in run blocking. Huge. Offensive line is going to be better. They were 8-3 in games Lamar Jackson played. They lost 5 of their final 6 games by a total of 8 points. This team should have been in the playoffs. They just had some bad luck go against them. But my question to you is this. With them being 8-3, one of the top teams in the AFC, them struggling to make the playoffs going down the backstretch, do you think we see them stop running Lamar in fear that he gets hurt?
I think that's definitely a possibility, but I think that's so ingrained to the Ravens' identity that they can't completely cut it out. But one thing I am looking forward to looking at this year is, can the Ravens develop that counterpunch? And what I'm talking about specifically is in the playoffs when the game gets a little slower and they can't go to their typical game script of just running the football. How's Lamar going to do in that drop back passing game? I'm really looking forward to watching Rashad Bateman this year. When he came out, he was my wide receiver 2 in that draft class ahead of Devonta Smith. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he has, because he hasn't even gotten to play with Lamar. When he finally got back healthy last year, he was playing with Huntley. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do and if the Ravens can develop that counterpunch.
Lamar or Josh Allen in fantasy?
As high as I am on Lamar, Josh Allen's a monster in fantasy. So I'd go Josh Allen.
I think you kind of answered this question. Who's the Ravens chain mover?
It's still Mark Andrews. He's the number 1 option. If you think about the Ravens offense, they love to run the ball, and then they love to hit the middle of the field. And that's where Mark Andrews specializes in, with those crossing patterns. So he's the chain mover, but look for Rashad Bateman to have a big year. And if you're playing fantasy football, I think he's a great late round flyer to pick.
Don't forget about my boy from Texas, Duvernay, man. I love that kid, dude. I think he's very under the radar. Speaking of injuries, we spoke about how bad their injury luck was. They signed Kenyon Drake today. Do you think that means J.K. Dobbins is going to miss the beginning part of the season?
Yeah, a lot of these running backs, like whether it's Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, I don't think they'll see like the start of the year. I think they got some lingering issues, so look for them not to get as many carries at the start of the year.
In terms of their defense, they drafted the kid Hamilton from Notre Dame, which is going to help their secondary. They signed Kyler Fuller. He's going to play the slot. They're getting Peters and Humphreys back to play the other 2 cornerback positions. They signed Marcus Williams. Right there, one of the better secondaries in the league. I think that is huge. They did add Michael Pierce, which is going to help the defensive line. I am a little bit worried about their linebacker core. That's my little bit of concern with the defense. They did change DCs. Mike McDowell is going to be the DC. This means less blitzing. They did blitz the 6th highest clip last year in the league. He prefers more situational blitz packages, plus former DC Martindale. He would allow the players to call their own audibles and blitz. I think the defense is going to be a little bit more structured. You know what I mean? There's not going to be so many players like calling blitz packages and everything. I like him at 20-1. We need to remember last year, it was them and the Chiefs. Who's going to come out of the AFC? And stuff kind of derailed for them. I think they're really under the radar. 20-1, I think is great value. Now, let's shift our attention over to the Pittsburgh Steelers. 9-7-1 last year. Pythagorean win total was only 6.91, over under 7.5. To win the North, they're plus 850. To win the AFC, plus 3,700, and to win the Super Bowl, plus 7,000. What do you feel about the Steelers?
The Steelers are definitely one of the more interesting teams in the NFL. First, you got to mention Mike Tomlin's record of no losing record in the past 15 consecutive seasons. It's got to be one of the most impressive records in the NFL. Will he do it again? It's hard to bet against that. But this roster and this AFC is just so deep. This AFC is just so deep that I don't know if this roster can carry him to a winning record this season. But let's get into their strengths and weaknesses. So the strengths, they got a great coach, great culture. The defense is very good. And then honestly, Big Ben, Hall of Fame career, but it might be addition by subtraction with getting him out of there, because I think they might be able to run some more unique stuff with Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett having stronger arms than him. Their weaknesses, their offensive line isn't that great. Their QB play, we don't know how good it's going to be, though. So that's still a weakness. And then there's a possibility of having too many cooks in the kitchen. We know Mike Tomlin is a defensive guy. Their defensive coordinator, I'm spacing on his name right now. And then they also have Brian Flores. So that's a possibility.
There's a lot of egos in that room. But I will say this, Bobby is correct. Tomlin, dog, ATS, God. God. He is an absolute God. I hate the terrible towel too. So let's just talk about this game. Grandma Al, she's referring to that Monday Night Football game where Justin Fields was just getting stomped and there was no roughing the passers. Bears definitely got a raw deal in that game last year in Monday Night Football. So here's my thing. I tried to tell everyone last year this offensive line was going to be the worst in the league last year, which it absolutely was. They did nothing to improve it. They returned 3 starters from last year, all graded out poorly by PFF. The only bright spot was Kevin Dotson, who looked good before suffering a season-ending injury. If they start Kenny Pickett, it's going to be hard on the rookie. They're bringing in new offensive line coach Pat Meyer, who's going to change the blocking scheme to more of a wide zone concept like Harris ran at Alabama. But changing, I really feel, is going to be hard on this unit because it's so poor. Also, everyone's talking about Najee Harris being hurt. Guys, if the injury was that bad, he wouldn't have played over the weekend. You know what I mean? He would not have played over the weekend in the preseason game. You mentioned Tomlin. Steelers have not had a losing season since 2003, which is mind-boggling. You mentioned their defense. Okay. Here's a trivia question for you. Okay. Which defense allowed the most rushing yards and the most rushing yards per attempt last season?
I would have thought the Chargers, but I'm assuming you're going to tell me it's the Steelers.
It's the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they're switching coordinators.
Interesting.
They brought in Trayvon Austin. This is my thing. Former Lions DC. It was an utter nightmare when he was the Lions DC. An utter nightmare when he was the Lions DC. They did add Miles Jack from the Jags. Jack and Watt, opposite sides, potential to be a good defensive line. That's something interesting. In terms of center, quarterback, I'm going to say it. People know it. The truth, Mitch Trubisky, he is my boy. He should be their starting quarterback. But I think since they used high draft capital on Pickett, they're going to start him. You mentioned their OC, Matt Canada. He likes to run pistols. He likes to run RPOs, pre-snap motion, and play action passing. All stuff Big Ben hates. This offense is going to look completely different. Play action passing is one of the staples of a Canada offense. They attempted less than 100 play action passes last year, bottom of the league. Big Ben only averaged 6.8 yards per pass attempt last season, bottom 3 in the league. I expect this to be more downfield passing. Thus, that's bad news for Deontay Johnson and Najee Harris, who had 74 targets. I think he's going to, I think Deontay Johnson, one of my bets on this team is Deontay Johnson under 999.5 yards. So basically under 1,000 yards, just because he lined up where AB was. As soon as AB left, Big Ben was still throwing to the AB spot. It was just Deontay Johnson because he was so used to throwing to that spot. Completely new offense, completely new quarterback. I think we're going to see either Claypool or Pickett's be the number one. I think Deontay Johnson's going to go down. They're going to throw the ball down the field more, less underneath stuff. I like that under 999.5 yards. And you know what? I played under 7.5. I think this is going to be the worst team in the division. Pythagorean win total is only 6.91. Teams like that low tend to regress to what it should have been the year before. I like under 7.5 for the Steelers. How about you?
Interesting. I give Mike Tomlin a lot of the benefit of the doubt just because his record precedes him. So I said 8-9 for them. I feel like they'll be able to figure it out, whether it's Trubisky or Pickett at quarterback. I still like them being able to their weapons that they have on offense. And I still think this is a good defense, apart from their run defense, apparently. But I still think it's a good overall defense, a good coaching staff, and a good culture. I just think this AFC is too good for them to actually have a winning record. But 8-9, the Browns are my worst team in this division. So,
ooh, dude, look at us, dude. Differencing of opinion. That's a little weird. And I call Mitch the Truth. That's my nickname for Mitchie, the Truth. Now let's go to the last team in the division, the team that kind of shocked the world last year, made it to the Super Bowl. These Cincinnati Bengals, 10-7 last season. Pythagorean win total 10.95. To win the AFC, to win the North, plus 165. To win the AFC, 12-1. To win the Super Bowl, 22-1. What do you think of the Bengals?
The Bengals had a good offseason. They had to address their O-line, which they did. They brought back a lot of different people, but people have to understand that the NFL, you can't just copy and paste results year after year. So you made the Super Bowl last year, you got better. That doesn't mean you instantly make the Super Bowl next year. The division got better. The AFC got better. So this is going to be a really hard road. Also, they have a number one. They were number one in the division last year, so they have a harder schedule. If you look at their schedule, it starts off pretty easy, but the back half of their schedule is murderous road. So just looking at it, you got the Bills, you got at Tampa Bay, at Tennessee, who wants revenge. Kansas City comes to town, who wants revenge. At New England, at Pittsburgh. It's a really tough back half of the schedule. Also, I love Joe Burrow. I love the weapons they have. But then this defense, it doesn't have a whole lot of playmakers. So that kind of worries me that they don't have that high-end talent on the defensive side. And I'm still not sold on Zach Taylor. So that's what I'm thinking about that.
So you mentioned team Super Bowl letdown. Last 4 teams that lost the Super Bowl did not match their win total the following season. Can you name the last team that that went over their win total the next year?
Don't know.
New England Patriots. After they lost to the Eagles last year, they went over the total.
Figures, yeah.
So I bet the under here. I have to go with that trend. I bet the under. The offensive line, they made great improvements, as you said. They gave up 30 sacks. PFF had them 29th. They need to protect Burrow. That's what they did. They brought in Ted Carlos, Alex Copa, and Lionel Collins. So there's an improvement in the offensive line. But here's my theory that I wanted to ask you. Okay, you ready for this? The Bengals were 20th in pass attempts, 7th in passing yards. Many of those were hot routes to Jamar Chase when the Bengals were blitzed. Do you think we see a drop in Chase's production with the improvement in the offensive line because Burrow won't be rushed as much?
I don't think so, only because I mentioned their pace earlier on in the episode, and I think they're going to play at a faster pace. So I think that's going to make up for those the better protection and the hot routes. So I think Jamar Chase's stats will be similar. So.
You mentioned them. They were 10th in early down run rates last season, 6th in early down run rates with a lead. You mentioned that you feel that's going to change. They're going to be playing at a faster pace, correct? You mentioned defense. Here's my issue with their defense. Last season, they blitzed the 26th most in the league, only 20%, but they created the 14th most pressure. Will the D-line be able to do that again? Because what they like to do is they like to drop 7 into coverage. And it's really hard generating that pass rush with 4. I'm a little worried about that. They did lose Larry Ogletree. He was their best run stopper. And CJ Uzman, the tight end. I think he was a great leader, a great fit for the tight end that they're going to run. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, they did everything right. Like, I like what they did. It's just the fact that I just had to like bet the Super Bowl letdown. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a little bit worried about that.
Yeah, it's really hard. They're in a difficult situation just because it really does feel like they did everything right. But it feels like regression is coming. Because you have to remember last year, their defense went on a tear in the playoffs, causing so many different turnovers. And just making life difficult for opposing quarterbacks. You can't expect them to reasonably get that hot again for the entire season.
And yes, Bobby, I am rocking the sleeveless hoodie, dude. I am rocking the Rock sleeveless hoodie, the most comfortable hoodie I have. So I don't know. I just think they're going to regress. You mentioned their coaching staff. Something I think that was key is this coaching staff, there was not much turnover. This has basically been the same coaching staff the whole Zach Taylor time. So let me ask you this. If they don't make the playoffs, do you think they make a coaching switch?
I don't think they do, but I hope they do. Because I think what I'm scared happens for the Bengals is they go 10-7, make a wild card, think everything's okay with Zach Taylor, when I think another coach could possibly elevate Joe Burrow on that offense to another level.
Okay. So what coach would you take?
Probably whatever hot young mind comes in the next few years. We'll see what happens. I don't have a good coach in mind, but I'm just not a fan of Zach Taylor. I think he's one of the towards the bottom of the league.
I'll tell you what. He's no Campbell from the Lions, dude. You want to talk about a guy that can just motivate people, dude? Sterling, thanks for coming in, man. You got a lot of stuff going on. Why don't you tell everybody positive stuff too? Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on social media and what you have going on?
Yeah, so follow me on Instagram at SilverStarSports, Silverstar, and then there's an underscore and then sports. Haven't been too active. Sorry about that. Just got a lot going on. A lot of good things though, as you mentioned. But I'm trying to get these NFL previews out. I might not get through all 32 teams, but I'll definitely post my predictions so that y'all can see them. So definitely follow me there. And I'll be on whenever you'll have me. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
You know what? We're going to be doing this NBA preview, man. We'll be doing the NBA preview. We are going to be doing a college basketball preview, and we'll be here every week during the NFL season, so you'll definitely be on. And also, you are going to be on the college football live stream of the game of the month for September. You are going to come on for one quarter with me and my boy XFL Jim and talk a little college football. You know what? So I'm looking forward to that. Guys, make sure you give Sterling a follow on Twitter. He will definitely step up his Twitter game and on Instagram. Until next week, boys and girls.